Okay, if I can have your attention, so we can get started. Put phones away and all that stuff, cause I want you to give Sharon your undivided attention. She's got some good stuff. She's got some really good stuff. Sharon's been coming for quite a few years. Sharon is a really, really good friend of mine. We go way back to Acts and all that good stuff. So, she is here to talk about mental health and all that good stuff. So please, she does a wonderful job, and she brought, yeah. I see our name. See, that's why I need this class. So, Hannah, thank you for coming and sharing your good stuff with us. So, anyway, this is Sharon Delgado. So, please give her your undivided attention, and thank you again for being here, my friend.
I'm gonna keep showing up forever.
Yes, amen.
You and not me, and I will come.
Yes.
Okay, so how many people were here last year when I spoke? Hey, guess what? We're gonna do something very, very similar. I pray a lot. And even, come on in, so this year I brought my interns. When you finish your master's program, these ladies are both certified in school counseling, but when they decide to get a licensed professional counseling, you actually have to do 3,000 hours of supervision. I know, wow. 3,000 hours. So this is the first time I've ever thought to bring my people, because here's what I want them to do. I'm Catholic, so I feel good with you. I need these two ladies to go into their own faith, or even not their faith, because I think we're all supposed to step out of our comfort zone and go in. And it'd be really cool if we really hit every student group. Do you see what I'm saying? And talk about mental health. The reason that Betty's always asked me to come right here at this time of the year is before y'all get to semester exams. Man, let's talk about some mental health issues, okay? So, Josie is with Pampa ISD. And then Hannah actually just come into the Canyon ISD, and I think is at Canyon Junior High. So, yay. Let me tell you what we're gonna talk about. Let me go back to what I said. I pray a lot. So you know how last year we did like a snowball fight and stuff? So when I think about, y'all are like, why are we having a snowball fight? Because if I asked y'all questions about mental health, Betty and I were talking about this. We've done a lot of ACTS retreats. If I had a bunch of us older people in the room and I said mental health, people shut down. It's embarrassing. It's hard to ask questions. So I swear every year when I pray about this, God says, do not make people ask questions. You make them write it down on that piece of paper, and we're gonna have this amazing snowball fight, and we're gonna throw them around, and then I'm gonna have volunteers who read it, and all of us will know it is not yours. You're just being so kind to read it for somebody else. And then the three of us and all of us are actually gonna join into a conversation about it. So as I'm just kind of talking about mental health, if you have a question about mental health, that's the piece of paper in front of you that anytime you want, you can write it. And like I said, we'll not make an assumption it's you. You're just gonna read it for somebody else, okay? Y'all friends can
have a piece of paper
and a pen. So, and you can write more than one question on there. I do want to talk about just mental health, to kind of talk for a few minutes on that, and these girls can jump in anytime. It makes me sad that in 2022, we still have a stigma when it comes to mental health. And it makes me super sad that we still believe that people are weak if they show emotions or get overwhelmed, and that makes me really sad. So I think it's important to come and talk about this, so I want us to be really open. Generalized anxiety. Now I'm gonna ask these girls in a minute if they have any suggestions, or if y'all have suggestions. So I want you to think about generalized anxiety. 1 in 4 people have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, bingo. 1, 2, 3, 4, bingo. So if I went around this room, there's gonna be a whole lot of people that actually would be diagnosed with generalized anxiety. So when I think about any disorder, you know how those music soundboards are when somebody's in a band and they move it up or down? Well, the truth about all mental illness is probably we all have a lot of things. We might have some OCD behavior. Maybe we don't. Maybe you got a really cluttered mess at home. That's okay. That's probably a sign of some OCD. But the only way people get diagnosed if it's really high and it's interfering with their life. That doesn't mean that they don't have anxiety. It's just not impairing them enough to have a diagnosis. So if generalized anxiety is 1 in 4 people are actually diagnosed, Do you think there might be a chance there's more people walking around with anxiety than not? I think so. I think so. Actually, when you look at Pinterest, this is the weirdest site to go get mental health charts on. But I don't know what Pinterest has done so well. If you look up anxiety charts, oh my God, good job for them, because it shows you the true picture of anxiety. Anxiety can look like OCD behavior. Did I get that test done? Did I mark that? Did I cross that? Did I finish that paragraph? It's a lot of obsessive thoughts, and that little wheel in your brain just keeps working. And it doesn't shut off. Some people have this beautiful brain at 9 o'clock, just goes, boop, done, tired. Yeah, I wish mine was that way. But all night long, that anxiety person is thinking, well, what if that happens? What if that happens? Yes, sir.
The first year of college, I did all online classes, which was not on my own accord. I had, towards the end of this, I want to say it was, what semester? I think it was the fall semester. I got so, like, I got through the end of the semester, I got insomnia. Just because of, like, everything. It was really bad.
It's a lot. So here's the cool thing. I won't out any of the older people that I know. I struggle with anxiety, and so anxiety is normally genetic. So I have 4 grown daughters. Hate that for them, because guess what? They have a piece of anxiety too. So we can talk about stuff. Hello, come on in. So what if you were going to explain what anxiety might feel like? Is there anybody that could explain maybe what anxiety feels like? Yes, sir.
I would say it's like being suffocated in the ocean.
100% agree. I one time had a college age person who said, it feels like I'm at the fair and I'm in those glass houses and I'm watching everybody have this great, happy, like stress-free life, and I'm in here trapped in my own box, and I am so in my own thoughts, I'm not living that life. And that helped me to go, oh dang, that tells me the level that they're at, that regardless of all the skills and coping skills, they were watching everybody else on social media having the best life ever, which I'm not a believer of that, but it sure made them feel worse seeing everybody else. What else do you think anxiety feels like?
Very isolating.
Very isolating. Very isolating. Like I said, there's people that their brains shut off and they have control over it. And they're like, what do you mean? Just tell yourself stop. Like, why can't you just tell yourself stop? And you're like, okay, tell my head that. My head is not listening. It doesn't want to. What do you think panic attacks might feel like?
Oh my God.
Oh, good. Tell me. I love panic attacks.
Well,
They're my favorites.
well, like, usually what happens is my heart starts racing, and it's like, usually my fingers start tingling, like I lose, like, circulation in my fingers, and like my heart just, beats so fast, and sometimes my legs shake.
100% agree.
And usually it happens like on like the first day of class or something. Yeah.
So 100% agree with you that if I have a college kid that I'm seeing, or somebody who's maybe a medical doctor, that even medical doctors get this, that if I have something, they get recertified, so a lot of doctors have to almost take the board all over again, causes even old doctors to stress out. But if you had a true panic attack and you went to the ER, guess what they're gonna start treating you for?
Heart attack.
A heart attack. The symptoms are so crazy, paralyzing, that you start to lose sensation, you start to get numb, you're having chest pains, that the first thing they do before they rule out anxiety is actually start treating you for a heart attack. Even at your age. Your body believes that much anxiety and your fear is true. The reason I said I love panic attacks is because there's lots of tools to start fighting them and start working on it. And that's, to me, the biggest thing that us as counselors can knock out is panic attacks, to do good self-talk. Here's the average. A panic attack lasts probably 6 to 10 minutes. So, I bet there's everybody in this room who's been through a crappy test or something that was longer than 10 minutes. So if I start telling myself good self-talk and go, hey, it's gonna be over, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna be okay. And I start really coaching myself, this is normal, if you need to, you can reach it. But I can start doing good self-talk and my panic attacks will become less than what they are now, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? What are suggestions that either of y'all might have? Because I want us to throw things out for a few minutes and talk. I want us to talk about anxiety. I want us to talk about depression, some of that, and then we're gonna answer these questions, okay? So does anybody in here have some suggestions for like coping with anxiety?
Well, good suggestion.
Okay, good. Well, hang on. Good. I didn't ask for a good one, did I? Did I ask for a good one? No, sir. Yay, I like the way you're thinking. Drink water, yippee skippy. Actually, water, it's so cool. They tell you even if your blood sugar is high, the first thing you should do is actually drink water. Isn't that cool? I didn't know that. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's good. Okay, so I'm gonna go there, and there. Yes.
Well, mine was more on the panic attack thing, but I was talking to an advisor at school that I transferred from, and she said, like, rather than thinking about, like, the environment, like, rather than thinking about the test or whatever is happening, think about the things you smell or whatever, like, think about other things, and think about find.
Yeah,
Find.
Mhm.
It's fun.
Yeah.
You're good.
Like it.
Don't have a panic attack. So here's the cool thing.
Five of them, and then you think of those five, and you find four things you smell, and you go to 3 things you feel or whatever, and then just go to 1, and then.
So here's the cool thing, even with little babies in car seats, you can teach them how to do that. So even if a little kid got overwhelmed, they actually call it centering. So even if you're in the middle of a test, I call it like a mini vacation. So if I'm in a stressful situation, I don't think it has to be dramatic, you're breathing to draw attention or anything like that. But if my feet, if we're all sitting here, like I can feel my toes on the bottom of my shoes. I start paying attention to my body, back to your senses. What do my feet feel? They're in my shoes. I can feel my knees just hanging down. My tellion's sitting on this hard chair. And so I'm gonna first recognize where my body is. It's on the ground, I'm paying attention to it. What do we hear? I heard that kick on. I'm gonna go to all my senses. What do I smell? All I'm doing is distracting my brain. I'm gonna breathe in through my nose, I'm gonna breathe out through my mouth, but I'm gonna breathe deep enough, it goes to my belly button. So if I'm in class and I start to get stressed, I promise you're gonna do worse on that test if you don't take a mini break. I close my eyes and I visualize, where's your safest place in the world? Maybe it's at home. What would I see in my room at home? Well, there's my little furry dog running around and making a mess. I almost would have a laugh. And so what our brains cannot do is have 2 opposing feelings. If I'm laughing, I'm fighting fear. Fear is going away if I laugh. University of New Mexico does a lot of research on nightmares, and they say if you add humor in there, that nightmare is going away because I can have fear and humor. So then if I go, oh, love this bedroom, I can see my posters on the wall, that tells you my age. That I said posters on the wall, so just know that. I'm gonna laugh on the way home that I got myself on that. But what does my bed feel like? What does my comforter? I'm gonna visualize and take a moment. The first thing you're gonna notice when you do that is your shoulders are gonna relax. Your body's not gonna be as intense. Give me a suggestion for anxiety, sir.
So I would say that you need to allow yourself to feel it.
Yeah.
When you're having a panic attack, like specifically, I would allow yourself to feel it and kind of think, okay, but what triggered this?
Right.
And be 100% aware, okay, this triggered it. And then be empathetic with yourself. Okay, this is the reason I'm feeling it, and it's okay. I understand why I'm going through this, but okay, now in the grand scheme of things, is the way I'm feeling really more important than the present moments?
100% agree. Are you going into psychology? If not, come our way. Come on. So, the one thing that we do is we're the biggest bully to ourselves. I feel like we go around and just go, I might as well put my name in the bully box when I sit there and go, you're so dumb, you're so stupid. Like, you don't, when we say all that negative stuff, like, oh my God, here you go again on a bully attack. It's not everybody else who's picking on us. It's our own brain that's turning on ourselves instead of exactly what you said. Bring it on. Like, I got 10 minutes before class. This is perfect timing. Yippee skippy, let's get this done. Guess what your anxiety attack is going to do? It's going to go, well, why are you acting that way? But if I say, I don't have time, I'm going to go to class, I'm building that engine up. I'm making myself get a bigger panic attack instead of, hey, bring it on. I have plans tonight. Let's just go ahead and get this over with. My mind, 100% what you said, is starting to relax. But I won't ask anybody to raise their hand, but I'm going to look at eyeballs. How many people beat themselves up with negative self-thoughts? It is the thing that all of us have to fight. We have to fight it. Okay, so do me a favor. What's your name?
Catherine.
Catherine, great name. Come here for a second. Okay, yeah, you make me happy. I think the right person. She's not that hard on herself. Okay, but if you were, would you go to her and say, girl, you have no time for this? Like, what people would you would have no ideal to go and say that to another human being, like the negative thoughts, like, you don't have time for a panic attack. Like, what's wrong with you? You wouldn't say that to. Then why would, she's pretty good at this. Why would those that are beating themselves up tell themselves something they wouldn't tell their friends? Because if she is, and I want to know how you do that, like, and that's probably somewhere you might have always been good about not beating
I
out.
don't know. I used to have, like, when I was in middle school, I had, like, the worst anxiety ever. And, like, I don't know what made it stop, but I don't know.
Hey, when did you quit picking on yourself? Did you ever pick on yourself?
I don't think so. I think it was more like I thought everybody else was, or maybe like, I don't know.
So here's the cool thing. I love case studies. So I think the cool thing about her anxiety being smaller is if she treated herself like her own best friend, like you were saying. If I look at myself and I say kind words, your anxiety starts to go away. But sometimes we're throwing gasoline on ourselves and making our own anxiety. You can sit down. Good job. I'm so glad, because you know what? I'm glad you were bold enough to say that somehow times we get the coping skills and our anxiety is going to drop. When we have good self-talk to ourselves, that starts to make it go away and we're own best friend. He said something else that I 100% love, is after the fact, somewhere we need to dissect it. If it's at the first of the semester, like that young man said, or if it's before I have a test, if it's before, I get some people who have anxiety before they go to church. I get some people who have anxiety going back home or walking into a room of strangers. I would dissect it, and then I would have notes in my phone that said, hey, when this happens, remember, you're gonna be okay. Something good could turn out. You could make a friend in the room. Hey, you beat anxiety before, you've got this. Does that make sense? Depression, I'm gonna wait on a little bit. I want you to write your questions on there, because we can come back to depression. I wanna really talk how we support other people, that y'all as college kids and the grown-ups, how do we support somebody who's depressed or suicidal? And this is the age and generation that you have to say something. You have to, like, I don't care if a kid's, people say that all the time to me. Even my interns are like, what if these people don't, because they're school counselors, they see kids, and they say this message too. You'd rather have a friend be mad at you than not be here tomorrow and then regret not saying something. So I want you to take a moment, write down a question you have about mental health, maybe the issues of being a college age person. Y'all all, every single person in this room has some kind of struggle they go through. Maybe divorced parents, maybe the pressures of choosing a major. And then you're gonna take it after you write the question, you're gonna write it up, and then we're just not gonna beat the snot out of each other, but you're gonna throw it a couple of times, we're gonna mix them up, and then we're gonna talk about those questions. So be brave, nobody's gonna know what you're handwriting, I promise. One year we had somebody who was like zooming like I was gonna go home with a black eye, I thought. It was pretty chaotic. Sorry for throwing y'all on the spot. Y'all like, wait. There's no wrong question. She knows I could talk. Wad it up, don't fold it, wad it up good, because it's gotta be a snowball. And if there's a question you don't feel comfortable reading it, one of us will read it.
This is why I have you guys.
Betty, this is why you have for the children. Wad it up.
Don't fold it all the way up.
Yeah, you gotta wad it up. And you get to actually throw it at people. He's like, y'all just left confession, I'm gonna get y'all. And then when you wad yours up, go ahead and stand up. Now if you have a family, like a big family, you need to strategize, you need to move around. Because we're about ready to have a good snowball fight. And do not do the flying snowball, don't just go like that, but don't put somebody's eye on it. Oh look, she's already getting started, she's ready. You can start throwing, throw them around, find a throw them. Pick them up again, throw them again. There you go, pass one, pass one.
Someone sent me. Someone sent me.
There's one, got it. Don't let one get Okay, so grab one. And now remember, we know it's not yours. But nobody knows that, so don't give it away. Grab one. If we lost one. So if you got your own, the whole thing is we're playing charades. You're acting like you didn't, okay? Don't go. I said, well, I mean, a friend of mine said. Okay, grab one.
Did everybody, we're missing one.
Well, the one that's missing, y'all will find it later and Betty will send me the question. Okay, so let's have a conversation. Who's brave enough to read theirs? Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Is it possible that someone who's not diagnosed with anxiety gets more anxious by worrying that they have anxiety? And then another question is, do people try to use their diagnosis to excuse themselves from their responsibilities, and how do we deal with that?
Well, the interesting thing is, you know, in my day, there's like walls of encyclopedias. And so the cool thing with Google is I can Google, and I have clients come in all the time and go, well, I really don't need you because let me tell you what's going on. And I'm like, well, you know, but so if you went through a psychology class, they would tell you, you're gonna say everything is you. You're gonna read everything and you're gonna have some characteristics. So it's easy to assume you have anxiety. So if I'm going through a stressful situation, maybe your parents are divorced or whatever, that's normal for you to have lots of conflict and lots of stress. If you've never had it, general anxiety, what I've realized, a lot of third graders start right then. The really smart kiddos in third grade get it that young. So they've just had it a long time. Sometimes the older people get, mental illness kicks in genetic wise. So I think anxiety being 1 in 4, I would think it's an underdiagnosed one actually. I think people are afraid of having the diagnosis. As far as I'm also a special ed person, so I retired out of special education. So I think there's people who use their disability like a coat and they like it. I want them to go, hey, I'm Sharon, but I also have ADHD. That I want it to go, hey, here's one of these real cool things that's real cool about me. I think a million thoughts, these girls know that. But it hasn't stopped me. Sometimes it makes me create lists. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think we have to realize what we have our own coping skills, but it shouldn't stop us from anything, if that makes sense. Yeah, let me ask. I'm sorry, you didn't even raise your hand. You're like, I didn't even raise my hand. Okay. What does it say?
So it says, emotions were not really accepted. How do we overcome that now and be able to feel emotions instead of being numb?
Oh my God, isn't that a great question?
It's a great question. I was gonna ask.
I wrote that down because here's the thing. Sometimes different communities, different cultures, I think of our German Catholics, I think of some people that are really sometimes emotionally constipated people. It ain't coming out. They're like, I'm gonna sit here and the worst thing in the world's gonna happen, I'm gonna be like, hey, what about that potluck we're having? Yeah, they're not talking about it. So, like, y'all watched patterns of your family. If y'all did a genogram, that's where we do the circles for mom and the squares for dad, and we go back 100 years. The same emotionally constipated people would run through the family. So the cool thing with y'all's age right here is you get to break cycles. Betty and I are both old, we're the same age, we're both old enough to see all the people who came before us, that somebody has to be the hero. And like, I love watching young parents who says, oh, you get to have a meltdown, you get to be overwhelmed. And if old people or other people who are emotionally constipated tell you like, oh, you're too sensitive, you're too whatever, then you almost have to bubble wrap yourself and say, I hate that you feel that way and I hate that you can't express your emotions, but for me, it's okay. And sometimes that's called setting a boundary with people. But back to what you said earlier, I really think people should own their emotions. Like, I think if you're upset and you're mad, you get to own that and then verbally communicate in an appropriate way. That by talking about mental health, we start to break the generational curses or cycles, and then y'all will do different, if that makes sense. Yes, sir.
Have you ever heard of psychoanalytics or Thomistic psychology?
I haven't, have y'all?
What was it?
Wait, say it again.
Psychoanalytics or Thomistic psychology?
Hadn't. There's this real, so I'll have to look that one up. I don't wanna call anybody out to ask that one. Down in Austin, there's this kind of weird thing going on. Makes me laugh. And I get called all the time by some interns down there, and I'm sure that's not the same thing that's going on down there. Whoever wrote that at the end of this asked me, so then I can see if that's the same thing or not.
That was me.
Was it? So, what is that? Explain it to me.
So, so it's, the only reason I know about it is because there's a Catholic thing. It's Catholic. It's a Catholic way of doing psychology.
Okay.
And instead of, because it's looking at the person as a human being, not as an animal without a soul. And so that's why it's psychoanalytics, Thomistic psychology, because it's based on St. Thomas Aquinas.
St. Thomas Aquinas' understanding of the human person,
Yeah.
how the human person is designed.
Yes.
So here's the cool thing. I think we get so used to labeling people, we make it that they're against us for us. So like when I went through psychology here, at WT and got my undergraduate master's here, people think oh, you can't be a Christian. Here's the cool thing. I got 2 solid Christians right there. And so, everything that they do is holistic. So if you walk into a counseling office and you said, hey, here's the thing about God. Good deal. It's like school. You just invited me into that conversation. You walk in, you're an atheist. You're struggling to be on this earth right now. I don't need to preach to you. I just need to help you live through tomorrow. So it's funny that so many people think psychologists aren't religious or spiritual. It just says that I can't preach to you while I'm letting you die at the same time, if that makes sense. That it is holistic. The majority of people actually that I know or work with are actually Christian counselors who look at the whole. That I don't think we have to split between religious or that. Now I'll tell you, sometimes it's not just our faith. There's other faiths that are like, well, you just didn't pray enough. Do 15 more rosaries and you wouldn't commit suicide. And I'm like, when we meet our God, I hope he loves that answer because I sure don't. I don't think we pray away, like me personally, I think intervention is back on the spectrum. I love people to try it the best they can do naturally, without medication, coping skills, whatever, but a lot of stuff is brain chemistry stuff. And if you get to OCD or depression or little babies who can't sleep, they're 3rd graders, and they're so stressed they can't get out of their house, there needs to be some medication to help them get past that, if that makes sense. Yes, ma'am.
What I think is just spread God experience with like a holistic understanding of the human person. You don't really have to be like preaching at them to still understand them as like how they were created by God. So it's just like a helpful way to understand like, you know, what are the different parts of the person internally. Like,
so even if I saw nuns or priests or I actually also contract with the diocese. I'm actually the sexual abuse person for the diocese. I do all our sexual abuse for the panhandle. And even priests and even religious sisters struggle with mental health. That they're kind of like us, that they live an amazing life of prayer and understand spirituality, but they still have genetics from their people of anxiety, depression, maybe bipolar or anything. I just think sometimes when we tell somebody like they're not praying enough, they could do, I've had people come in that are doing 10 rosaries a day, 2 hours of like chapel time, and they're like, I still want to kill myself, and I'm like, I can't tell you to pray more.
yeah, no, it's not about like telling them what to do. It's more about understanding like how God created us as human beings.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like you don't have to literally tell them anything, but just like see them as God created them. And I mean, obviously there's various ways to do that, but it's just
The cool thing is, I actually think each one of y'all could be a counselor. Because truthfully, I find what the most powerful thing is to be seen and heard. I think you could be her counselor sitting on the couch in here. I think the power of being seen and heard is extremely powerful. So, like, I'm not a big, like, have to wear, like, our titles, but I think that y'all all get to be, like, each other's listening partner and stuff like that. Who else has another question?
I'll read this one.
Good deal.
It says, besides locating sensory things, how can you help a friend who is going through a panic attack?
I think the centering right here is the first thing I'd do. I'd sit there and go, hey, I'd remind them very first thing, hey, you're gonna be okay, 6 to 10 minutes probably, this is gonna pass. Hey, what do you hear? Let's just close our eyes and breathe. What do you hear? Like, what does your feet feel? What do you smell? I would get them, and really it's distracting your brain. The cool thing with everybody in this room that has an iPhone or a Samsung, you actually can download a anxiety buster. And so everything I just told you comes in this really beautiful voice and starts telling you exactly that. Oftentimes I have the person who's the most connected to that person. So maybe your mom was your security blanket. Mom, I'm having an anxiety attack. She just starts saying the same things I do in a nice calm voice, and it makes that person relax. But if you don't have that person, then the great thing about Anxiety Buster, it just does it for you. You could just hit play. I've had kids at private schools who just go to the restroom, hit play. They listen to it, take 10 minutes in the restroom, go back, not one person knows. So, for people that I deal with that cut, I actually like sensory stuff for their hands. I like people to have the, like the hair ribbons, or, you know, like the little, like, I don't know what they're called. Yes. So I love when people sit there and they're just like that, rubbing it, because it's a sensory thing. Or this is the same feeling as rubbing the seam of your shirt. It gives you that sensation of tactile kind of stuff. Read another question.
How do you sort out your thoughts on a bad mental day? And the other question on the sheet is, how can you find or track what triggers you?
Cool. I'm gonna go back to you, bud. You answered really well, Irvin. I really want you to get that. So what he said, I'm gonna quote, what's your name?
Eduardo.
Eduardo. Oh my God, I have so many Eduardos in my family. I spent time with 2 of them today, which is very funny, a dad and a son. Okay, so here's what a famous person I know, Eduardo, would say. He would say the first thing that they need to do is read the question again.
How do you sort out your thoughts on a bad mental day?
Okay, so back to what he said. We have to own them, and we have to be okay with having a bad day. So I'm going to lead or follow with what Eduardo said, that I would care for myself. If I had a cold, or I had COVID, or I had like some major, I wouldn't tell my bud, get up and go to work. Like, what are you being such a sissy about? I wouldn't. I would treat it myself like he said. I would be my own best friend and say, dang, today I'm not my best. And you and I have talked a million times. If somebody's grieving, I'd say, go get a cup of water, box of Kleenex, watch the saddest show ever, and have a good emotional release. I think Marley and Me was created just for a good adult's purpose. God, whoever created that movie, I do not know why, but I would pick a really sad movie and I would have a great emotional release. I'd drink a ton of water and I'd have a good emotional release. I'd give myself permission to have an off day. It's not my best day. Tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna get myself back. If I had 4 or 5 days that I couldn't get out of it, I'd start going, hey Betty, hey friend, I'm really struggling, I might need some help. That's what I would do on that. Yes, ma'am.
A way that I've been able to somewhat work out of negative self-talk is talking to myself like my 6-year-old self, and like looking at a picture and being like, she's still me, you know, so talking to myself like that and like comforting myself like I'm little me.
When I'm with clients, and they laugh at me because I love to do goofy stuff, so I really am big about empty chair, and I really, if I sit there and I tell myself, I had a 26-year-old computer programmer, a guy, absolutely brilliant, he is writing major programs and stuff, and like in 2 minutes, like his negative talk was like exhausting me. I was like, oh my God. That I said, what would you say that to the youngest person that you know right now? And I like the inner self, but like think of a niece or nephew or somebody like that. Would you really say all that stuff to them? No, you wouldn't. But somewhere along the way, we started telling ourselves all that junk, and we made our self-esteem super low, and we believed it. I had that guy in a 2-hour period, all he had to do, and I won't tell you this because sometimes people actually bruise themselves. He put a rubber band, because he's like, I know I have a lot of negative thoughts. He said, but I don't know how many. He had that rubber band on. Within 2 hours, he had to take it off. Because every time he said, dang, that was stupid, or like, why didn't you get that idea first? He said he almost bruised his arm in 2 hours of all his negative self-thoughts, and that's 2 hours out of a 24-hour day. No wonder he's struggling with depression or doesn't feel qualified or self-esteem or whatever. I think the way we talk to ourselves is almost on the synthesizer board, the beginning of everything. How we deal with ourselves with anxiety, depression, failure. Hey, you got this. That's okay, that's a test. Guess what? I'll average out in the end. That's the truth, guys. Remember that. When you have a low crappy day, go, oh, Sharon said this. Guess what? What's the average? When I graduated from WT, I got a job right away. Nobody said, hey, you have that average. It's good self-talk that I do to myself that I don't stress myself out. What else? Yes, sir.
When I'm so busy and nothing can give or be removed from my priorities, how can I not allow the busyness to overwhelm me and take my peace?
Doesn't God have a sense of humor? I have no doubt you were actually supposed to read that. Isn't it funny? God is funny. Is there any of y'all that read these that went, oh man, this is funny. I would have asked this question. So, I see us all having this plate in life. And we say, if I ask every one of y'all, list your top 5 priorities, you would list these top 3 things, and I think we'd all list like God and our family and this, whatever. Love that. And then I'd say, oh great, I love that. Let's look at y'all's time commitment for this week. Well, those 3 things aren't the top of where you're spending the majority of this week's time. So then I think it makes us incongruent. I think we have one plate. And we say, oh my God, I'm gonna love to help you, Betty. I've got a full-time job and I got a full-time caseload, and my parents are saying I never come home, but I just can't wait to do more and help more. That stuff will fall off. And one time St. Mary's asked me to speak to them, their women's group, and I thought, I prayed about it, and what God told me to say is sometimes we're supposed to say no. That is not what St. Mary's wanted that day. We're just like, we were hoping they'd all come volunteer. No. Sometimes God tells us to be still, and that I'll have to pass on this opportunity right now. And when my life slows down and I can take good care of myself, I'm going to come back and volunteer. But sometimes he wants us to say yes to things, but sometimes he wants us to say no. Our plate is too full, and we're still godly in that moment. Yeah, they were like, Sharon, we didn't think he was going to tell our volunteers to say no. Sometimes even priests have to say no, but they have to say no, I'm too busy. What's another question? Yes, Mel.
What are some good self-talk statements to use when experiencing anxiety?
So here's what I found. I do not think another human being can create it, because I love positive. I mean, I love it, love it, love it, love it. But those are my words. Go back to what you said. Somewhere you know your own brokenness. Last night I sat with a lady who's been in a really bad abusive relationship with a drug addict. It's a very hard one. Like, addiction stinks, it's hard, it's lots of lies, it's lots of manipulation. And so I was letting her talk. And really, every single one of us have the answer inside of us. Sometimes we just have to talk it out to hear it. And she said, I just want him to keep us, or why aren't we good enough? So tell you the truth, she's got to answer that question with her and her, because everything I tell her is going to be wrong because I'm not her. So as soon as she said that, I said, wow, that's your work. You got to figure out, why aren't you good enough? And why does your value have to depend on some addict who's telling you that? Maybe she needs to go back and tell that little girl in herself, man, you are good enough. You're an amazing princess. You're amazing whatever. Now, the intern that's not here, she had to carry around a Cinderella. She's had it for like 2 weeks. Yo, this is the craziest thing. This is how positive self-talk is. She's highly qualified. She has a master's degree. She is a brilliant woman. I rarely take interns. Like, they have to be what I would set my family to, that I'd send them to. So she didn't even realize, even as a therapist, how many times she put herself down. She wouldn't even take a compliment. But the coolest thing, you weren't there. This is the coolest thing. In 10 minutes, the last time we met, she gave herself 2 compliments. Like, I mean, it almost makes me cry that I couldn't have gave her the words. All I could do is say, hey, carry around this little Cinderella and remind yourself, you're that girl.
And she put it right in front of her work.
Yes, at her school, there's a little Cinderella sitting there, and I'm sure every kid's asked, how many kids did she say, I'm this age and I struggle with saying kind stuff or saying thank you and receiving a compliment? But my words would have not been God's words for her, if that makes sense.
And I don't think she realized it until you pointed out
Oh.
that she took compliments without.
She gave
without
herself
knocking herself
compliments.
down first.
And I was like, twice in 10 minutes, did you hear that? Because it's usually the opposite. And she didn't even know it until we pointed it out, so. What else? How are you on time, buddy? You keep me, because God knows it. What's another one? Yes, ma'am.
18 after. My parents say that being emotionally unbalanced just doesn't exist, that no one needs mental medication. Is it wrong to use anti-anxiety, anti-depression medication like forever?
So here's the cool thing. like I said, 26 years I worked in the school district, and what my job was there is the 1%ers. It was the violent kids. I've had 2 kids commit 2 double murders. I've had other kids commit murders. I think if I make a comment like that, that says I've never struggled with the depths of depression. So, by the grace of God, I have never had depression. I've had bad days. I've lost the majority of my family, lots of grief, lots of whatever. But and I'm a science major, so God's got to prove stuff to me, and I hate that. I wish my mind wasn't that way. I have 10 depressed people who are in depression. They don't know each other, but they describe it 100% the exact same way. And to them, it feels real that they're in a pit almost of hell, and there's no light coming in, and they don't even know how to take one step in front of them. And that voice is so loud to commit suicide. I think for a period of time, if they've tried everything they can, sometimes they have to get out of that funk, and sometimes that's a chemical imbalance in their brain, and they need medication to be successful. Now, I actually in the school system worked with a lot of bipolar people. People would tell me their diagnosis and be like, hey, guess what, I'm bipolar. Hey, that's messed up. I'm glad you trusted me. How they were successful is they did long-term medication management to stay on it. A lot of our people on the street are people with schizophrenia or schizoid, and they don't do medication. They feel good, they get off. Those people actually need to be on long-term medication.
Can I give an analogy?
Yes.
So I always tell my suicidal kids, because their parents are telling them, you shouldn't feel this way. There's no reason that you should feel this way. Everything's fine, you have a great life, everything's great. Our brains are like cars, and so you need different things for cars to work properly, like gas, oil, coolant, water, all the things. And if one of those gets off, our car doesn't work right. And that's the same thing with our brains. So if we run out of gas, it doesn't mean our brain is broken, or our car's broken, it means it needs more gas. Mm-hmm. Our brains are the same ways with chemicals, only it's more of a balance rather than run out. Mm-hmm. But when I explain it to kids, like, maybe there's no reason, but you can't see what's going on in your brain. You don't know what your hormones and your chemicals and all the things are doing, and it throws it off. And so whether you need counseling or you need medicine to get the chemicals back where they need to be, that was the best analogy I've ever heard. So
it's a tool. I can't tell a diabetic, hey, you don't need insulin. Mm-hmm. Just because y'all don't need insulin, I actually need insulin. So, or like, go back to your panic attack. I've had panic attacks, but not to the depths of my clients. Just because I haven't experienced something, I can't tell somebody it's not real. Those people with depression, every single one's described it in a way that 100% I can cry my eyes out, but it's so real, it scares the crap out of me. I can't imagine being in their shoes. Just because I hadn't experienced it by the grace of God, I hadn't, doesn't mean it's not real for somebody else. What's another question? Man, I want the stigma of mental health to go away. Yes, ma'am.
What place do Jesus and Mary have in our healing from mental health struggles?
Yay. So Betty and I have done a lot of ACTS retreats. One of the coolest things, and I had a guy interview me the other day to be a supervisor, and he said, hey, what's a like counseling thing that's done that you kind of pushed your limits? Well, I've done a lot of grief. Helped Hope and Healing start the first 7 years, served on the Texas Coalition for Suicide Prevention, the top 27 counties for, 10 years, 15 years, did a lot of suicide with, like, dealing with it, the aftermath of it, and prevention. So I dealt with a lot of death. I had a post-abortion group that approached me and said, hey, come and do our retreats. You know grief. Like, we keep praying and you're the person. And I remember going, well, I think you need somebody who might know that from a personal experience different than me. So where does God come into the healing? First of all of us have to be able to go, we're carrying around some crap from our past or things that make us not feeling well. She's got a pretty heavy backpack. Here, let me see your backpack. Good, hey, this looks good. Hey, Catherine? Catherine?
It is heavy.
It is. So, come on, Catherine. You don't have back issues, do you?
No.
Okay. The backpack I have in my office is actually 75 pounds. So, the truth is, we all carry this around. I don't care if you had a perfect life. I don't care, I don't believe in a perfect life, but If I double this, we all carry stuff around. What I learned one time doing a group at Paladura is, if I put 75 pounds on here, what Catherine would do is actually walk like this, and she would only see the floor, the negative stuff of life. The heavier our stuff is, that's where we lose the sight of hope and whatever. But where does God come into place? So, no, you're gonna hang on to it, sister. She's like, I'm forgiving. If I unzipped this and I took out some dirty rocks and I went, man, this is when that divorce was really tough, when you were a little kid and you wanted both your parents. I'm making this up, I don't know her, so just don't assume that I have to seek help, but part of it in my spirituality, it doesn't matter if this was 500 pounds, but it knows this about me. I only with God's help truly am I gonna carry that. I can do this all on my own. I still can seek mental health. I can take medication, but my spirituality says the only way I can carry the junk of this world is through a higher power. That's the only way I can release it. Because the truth is, Betty and I have been through a lot of loss. And the only way we get up and speak hope and joy and stuff is because we've been able to go, here, I'll take that. I actually think God really says that to every single one of us. Hey kiddo, I'll take it. You don't have to carry it. Like, give it to me. Let me have it. I was made for this. I was made to carry your struggles. So I think that's how, regardless how horrendous, I don't care if you've been through the worst sexual abuse, worst parenting, worst whatever, I truly believe healing comes through God working on your stuff. And like you said, dissecting it. Why am I sad? What are my family issues? And then I'd love y'all guys to release that at this age instead of being a 50, 60-year-old. That is a preach right there. Like for all of us older people, because I deal with young people and they're working through their crap and they're dealing with it, they're going to release it. They're going to be their own owner's manual and deal with their stuff. They're not going to damage their own kids. They're not going to break up all their marriages and relationships. They're going to have a different life. Yes, ma'am.
Sister Mary Michael told us this weekend, and I
God,
thought
I
it
love
would
her.
fit. I know. She said that, what is suffering? Suffering that is not,
Suffering that is not transformed is transmitted.
Yes. There we go.
And I bleed all over people. Broken people break people. God, isn't that horrible? I used to do a lot of drug addiction counseling. People would say that and I'd be like, oh, that's the truth. I hate it. Until you get healed. And then you actually become a testimony to heal somebody else. The cool thing about doing acts or awakening or whatever, you hear a lot of people that's been through stuff and there's their joy. One more question.
5 minutes.
Okay, good. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
How do you know if your problems are bad enough to seek medical help or need things like medication?
Okay, so here's the cool thing. I have a plate. My plate is I have school, I have church, I have this. I'm pretty happy. Like sometimes I have some bad days, and you know what? For the most part, more days out of not, I have good days. Now, I have a little secret, and I hate to tell you this. Life is not going to be perfect, and there's not going to be bad days or days you don't want to cry your eyes out. That's not the truth. We all have some down days, and we're going to take care of ourselves, like Eduardo said. We're going to just be kind to ourselves and go, hey, not the best day. If I start to have more not so good days, and I'm feeling stressed out, I can't sleep, I'm not eating well, my personality starts to change, and I'm having less happiness than I did before, then I'm started down the muddy road and I'm about ready to get stuck big time. I'd like you way back here when you turn down that muddy road and started not feeling your best, right then to go get help. Like I'd like us all right there to have major yellow flags like, hey girl, you're not your best, you're stressed out, go talk to a friend. That doesn't work, guess what? Go see the campus counselors here. That doesn't work, we get more help. Because we prevent having destruction or a plate falling in that. Does that make sense? She's like, girl, I didn't ask that question, I just read it. Does that make sense? What I hope you get from today is the majority of people in here genetically probably have mental health issues in their family and their genetics. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's normal. We're perfectly made by God, so that means that He's gonna give us the tools and we're gonna get the help we need. If it's with medication, if it's with counseling, if it's with support groups. But whatever you've been through so far, I highly encourage you at this age to deal with it and work on it. That later on when things come on, that backpack of yours would be half of that and you'd be like, okay, I've had my crap, but look at me. I want that. You're always gonna have stuff, but not where it weighs you down enough that it's hard to walk or run with it. Yes, ma'am.
This is super quick, but I think the main way to break the stigma in yourself is realizing that mental health is physical health because your brain is an organ. You have to take care of it. And when you experience trauma, even if it isn't genetic, it's still changing your brain and you have to take care of it.
And we carry it. We carry it. So like all the research says there's isms. That you can call any kind of isms that our body suffers, that we store trauma. And you know, I have talked about the emotionally constipated. There's a lot of people who, but you know, I never could come up with a word with it, like people who won't utter one word. It's like it's emotional constipation. But we actually store it, our body stores it. And so Betty Ross wrote in one of her biographies, or a biography that was done about her, she said if you picked up the flag, she could tell you where she was by running her hand over that flag. She could set from the front porch of all the people that were talking exactly where you were in that moment. Well, that's what we do. If I ask you about that traumatic moment, here's what I saw, here's what I smelled, here's, because it's so stored in us. And part of healing is actually releasing it. And those visual memories go in that body, it releases it from our body. I really appreciate y'all guys letting us come. One of the topics we didn't talk about is suicide too much. But if there's a feeling that you're struggling that much, or you know somebody who is, I promise you, if you go to Betty calls me anytime, she has my number, she will not bother me to wake me up, and we'd rather talk about it and be woke up than have a regret later. So this is probably the first year we didn't talk about it so much. And that's God saying, hey, there's just maybe a lot of anxiety or people to support anxiety in here. Okay, but thanks for letting us come. Okay.
If you haven't noticed, outside of the student leadership office, there's a little plastic with little puppy holes in there. Sharon's card is in there. If, I mean, I don't wanna say, well, here, you need this.
Well, and my interns are gonna give you their cards too. So like I explained to them, Hannah's actually has an office here. In Kenya, which makes me super happy. I want y'all to have a ton of therapists here. Going to a therapist is like this. I go to the first person and maybe they don't feel comfortable. I'm not for everybody. That's okay. I'm not supposed to be. And then she goes to the next person, she goes, hey, like, I think you fit me. We go to whoever we find that speaks our language, and that's who we go to. So like these girls right here, you know, if you called them and you said, hey, my parents have insurance, or my parents don't have insurance, and say, I'm a WT person that I heard you talk, they'd figure it out with you. They'd figure it out. So they have cards here that they're gonna leave with Betty that y'all guys can pick up. And then Josie's in Amarillo and stuff.
I work in Tampa, but I live in Amarillo, so don't think you have to drive to Tampa.
You ever get in a dark spot, call Betty, and I promise the two of us will figure it out. And I'm not even gonna.
I'll drive in my.
Yeah. And I answer, I'm old, you gotta let it ring a whole bunch. I'm really old. Well, I feel bad saying that, we're same age, so Betty's like, thanks, Sharon. Thanks a lot for that one. But thank y'all guys for letting us come.
Thank you.
I will take your notes because I will actually read them. And if there was one I was supposed to answer, I'll shoot it back to Betty. Thank you. Go get some Jesus.